I never expected a millionaire's desperate cry would lead to a heartwarming act of kindness. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It started like any other Tuesday in our rundown little town, the sun attempting to break through the persistent gray clouds. But then, I heard it. A howl of anguish that sliced through the hum of the daily grind. It was raw, unsettling. I rushed outside, my heart pounding, to discover a man collapsed on the ground near the old fountain. The stark contrast of his tailored suit against the cracked pavement sent shivers down my spine that he was large. His body shook with sobs, yet he looked so out of place. Golden cufflinks twinkled in the weak sunlight, a clear indicator of wealth. But that didn't matter now. I could feel his pain. The crowd began to gather, whispering amongst themselves. Who is he? They wondered. Is he okay? My instincts kicked in, and I felt compelled to help. Trying not to seem overly curious, I edged closer. The familiar scent of damp earth and the faint smell of cologne wafted toward me. His deep breaths echoed like thunder. I recognized him now, Harold Mason, the billionaire who built half our town with his business empire. Yet, here he was, stripped of pretense, heartbroken. I could almost see the weight of his sorrow, thick and heavy. As I leaned in, I caught fragmented words slipping through his trembling lips. They're gone, all gone. His voice cracked like glass. My chest tightened. I could feel his fear. Questions flooded my mind. What had happened? Who had left him in this state? The crowd shifted. Murmurs grew louder, a buzz of disbelief and concern. Phones came out, capturing the moment, as if this spectacle, too, could be washed away with likes and shares. But it wasn't just a show. This was a man on the brink of despair. A millionaire reduced to tears, exposed to us, raw and vulnerable. As I reached out, not knowing what to say, the weight of the world seemed to settle between us. How could someone with so much feel so empty? Every tear that fell from his cheek seemed to circle back and settle into the dry, cracked earth beneath him. I extended my hand hesitantly. Mr. Mason. I whispered. He looked up, eyes misty, full of so many unspoken words. In that moment, everything froze. The world around us blurred, and it was just him and me. My heart raced. Would he accept my help? Then, something unexpected happened. A woman broke through the crowd. She wore a simple dress, her hair pulled back tightly. You don't have to do this alone, Harold. She called, her voice firm. A shiver coursed through me, as if a gust of wind had swept in, strange and unsettling yet oddly reassuring. That I glanced at her, then back to Harold. Who was she? Why did her words hold such power? The intensity grew, and the crowd hushed, anticipation hanging thick in the air. I felt a lump rising in my throat, the weight of uncertainty pressing down. This was only the beginning. As Harold looked back at her, confusion twisted his features. What had driven him to this moment? What lay in his past? A million questions raced through my mind. I was desperate to know more. And in that heartbeat of silence, everything was still. What was going to happen next? Why was he really crying out? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. In the stillness of that moment, an ache settled deep within me, a knot forming as I pondered the layers of anguish that lay beneath Harold Mason's tears. The woman who had stepped out among us held his gaze, her presence like a lighthouse in the storm. I could see the tremors in his shoulders, the way the facade of wealth crumbled without any regard for social standing. He needed someone, anyone, to help him navigate this turmoil. "What do you want?" he whispered hoarsely, and my heart broke at the desperation lacing his words. "I'm here for you," she said, stepping closer, her voice softer now. "You're not alone. Talk to me." Her vulnerability seemed to cut through Harold's shock, and the rawness of his sorrow pulsed through the air. I held my breath, willing him to respond. But before he could say anything, a figure suddenly emerged from the crowd, the mayor, flanked by a couple of officers, shepherding the witnesses into a semblance of order. I recognized his pressed suit and polished shoes, and immediately, I felt a ripple of unease slip through the crowd. The mayor approached Harold like a hawk surveying its catch, eyes narrowing not with concern but with scrutiny. "Mr. Mason," he said, voice clipped, "what happened here? We need to make sure everything is in order." His posture suggested he was more concerned with appearances than well-being, a reminder of the world Harold came from, a world of privilege and reputation, where emotions were to be hidden away. "Nothing is in order." Harold's voice cracked, filling the silent space with weight. "Everything is falling apart." "You need to get up," the mayor insisted, impatience inching into his tone. "People are watching." He gestured dismissively towards the crowd, some of whom were still recording, eyes glued to their screens like vultures waiting to pick apart the bones of public shame. Something twisted in my chest as I witnessed Harold's struggle. Here was a man who had built skyscrapers, created jobs, and significant wealth within the region, yet faced with personal loss, he was treated as a spectacle. At that moment, my own resolve hardened. I stepped slightly forward, hoping to offer some support amid the encroaching shadows. "Please, give him a moment," I implored, my heart racing with the unexpected courage I found within me. The mayor turned toward me, eyebrows raised in disbelief. I felt the eyes of the crowd shift, judgment flickering like candle flames. Harold looked at me then, a flicker of gratitude passing through his forlorn expression. As the mayor opened his mouth to protest, Harold raised a weary hand. "No more pressure. Just give me a second." The mayor huffed in annoyance but stepped back, waiting like a hawk, while the woman took a seat next to Harold on the pavement. "Let it out, Harold," she encouraged gently, her expression unwavering. "We're here. You don't have to carry this burden by yourself." For a fleeting moment, I found inspiration in her kindness. Hope radiated out from those simple words as I shifted my feet, trying to gather my thoughts. Perhaps this was the beginning of something raw and transformative, a chance for Harold to speak a truth that had long remained buried. Though he seemed to drift away from reality, through the cascading walls of grief, slowly but surely, his breath began to steady. He leaned against the cool stone of the fountain, a monumental symbol of heartbreak against the backdrop of a once thriving town. "I lost my family," he finally mumbled, tears streaming silently down his cheeks. "An accident. I was too late." His voice fractured, breaking like fragile glass. I could see the walls encasing him slowly shatter, and the air around us thickened with unshakable sorrow. The woman offered him a tissue from her small clutch, her eyes shimmering with understanding, but I remained rooted in place, my heart clenching in sympathy. I had never experienced such profound grief, yet it filled the air as unmistakable as the scent of rain-soaked earth. Just then, outrage bubbled up from within the crowd, and the whispering grew louder. "He doesn't deserve our pity." A voice called out from the back, breaking the heaviness like a glass ceiling overhead. I turned, my stomach tightening at the sentiment. An argument ignited among the bystanders, voices rising in opposition. It felt as if the air around us became electric with conflict, a stark reminder that empathy could so easily turn to scorn. As the commotion escalated, Harold's head snapped up, eyebrows furrowing as he processed the backlash. The tension coiling around us felt palpable, impending like a thunderstorm. Would he withdraw again into the layers of grief, shutting us all out, or would he find a path through the turmoil? Then from the corner of my eye, I caught a flash of movement, a small child, no older than 7, weaving through the legs of the gathered adults. She looked up at Harold, her innocent eyes wide with concern, and without hesitation, she approached him, cupping his cheek with tiny fingers. "Don't be sad," she said, her voice mirroring the soft innocence that sometimes bursts through the chaos of life. "My mom says tears are okay. You can cry if you need to." A collective silence settled over the crowd as we all turned our attention to this pure moment of unexpected hope. I felt a flicker of warmth in my chest, and I couldn't help but believe that this little girl might be the beacon of light amid a storm. But then, piercing through the fragile silence, the mayor's impatient huff resurfaced. "This is ridiculous. We can't allow this display to continue. Mr. Mason has responsibilities." The words resonated like ice through the warmth of the small girl's gesture, like a crack forming in the dam that held back the torrent of emotions swirling around us. I grasped for what felt like an unraveling thread of fracture in this tense reality. Would Harold push through, or was this the moment he would retreat back into obscurity? In that instant, the urgent need to understand his story gripped me more than ever. But as the tension thickened, I couldn't shake the fear that the momentary kindness we all witnessed might be swallowed whole by the dark tide of judgment looming ahead. Then came the shock. The mayor suddenly froze, his gaze shifting to Harold. "You're hiding something, aren't you?" He pointed an accusing finger, and the crowd inched closer, hungry for more drama, more scandal. The air became charged, the future uncertain. Harold looked like a deer caught in headlights, and as the gravity of the mayor's words sunk in, the fragile thread connecting us all seemed ready to snap. What had he concealed, and how would this revelation change everything? No longer just a matter of personal grief, the stakes were rising. The question lingered, poised on the edge of revelation, just what had happened to lead Harold Mason to this moment. The stillness that followed the mayor's accusation felt like a submerged silence, the kind that precedes a brewing storm. Harold's face paled, a mix of embarrassment and disbelief washing over him. The congregation around us, once echoing with a murmur of sympathy, now resembled a pack of wolves gathering at the scent of vulnerability. Each face mirrored a different emotion: curiosity, judgment, disdain. I could almost hear the gears of speculation turning in their minds. "You're hiding something, aren't you?" The mayor's voice dripped with condescension, as if he relished the opportunity to take down a man who had always stood above him in the social hierarchy. It was a power play, one that sent a shiver racing down my spine. As the crowd leaned in, I looked from Harold to the little girl beside him, her small hand still resting on his cheek, her brow furrowing with concern. In her innocence, she seemed untouched by the malicious undercurrents swirling around us. A misplaced weight shifted in me. Who was I to intervene? But the urgency of the moment propelled me forward, just as it had done before. "Why does it matter?" I called out, my voice carrying in the sudden lull. "He's a human being carrying a heavy burden, just like any of us. Is this really the time for accusations?" The mayor blinked at me, momentarily thrown off guard, while the crowd shifted uncomfortably, some murmuring in agreement, others sneering in disdain. I could feel their eyes piercing my skin, questioning why I was defending someone they had already deemed beneath their scrutiny. A woman beside me whispered harshly, "You don't know him like we do. He's done terrible things." "Maybe so," I retorted, "but we don't know his story. We don't know the pain he's carrying." I turned back to Harold. "You don't have to reveal anything if you're not ready, but it's okay to feel vulnerable. We're here for you." A part of me recognized the irony in this, defending a man who had built walls around himself, but my heart pushed through that. Something shifted within the air, a subtle whisper lingering in the breeze. People began to soften, if only slightly, as Harold seemed to gather himself once more. The little girl's wide eyes sparkled like stars in a dark sky, holding on to a flicker of hope that told me she believed in his strength. I saw her courage in her simple act of kindness, and it began to seep into Harold as well. He turned to her, a small smile breaking through the cloud of sorrow, and as if her compassion had cracked the icy shell he had shielded himself with, the moment became palpable, a fragile yet undeniable rebirth of support. "I am sorry," he stammered, his voice raw but firm. "I've been so wrapped up in my own pain, I didn't think there could still be kindness out there." The mayor fumed at the unfolding scene. This is not how a man of your stature should behave. You're making a fool of yourself. His voice rose, but the congregation remained divided, hesitant. The reins of expectation tightened on Harold further, but beneath that pressure lay a precious opportunity. Harold, I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts like a moth to a flame. You're carrying so much. Maybe sharing will lift some of that weight. I looked deep into his despairing eyes, a universe of hurt intermingled with shadows begging to be seen. You may be a millionaire, but you're still a person. With struggles. You don't have to wear that mask anymore. And just as I thought we might breach the wall he built, a commotion erupted from the edge of the crowd. A man broke through, pushing past the throngs of people, his face flushed with urgency. Harold. Wait. Gasps rippled through the onlookers, curiosity stoked. The newcomer's disheveled appearance and frantic gaze seemed out of place against the polished image of the mayor. The electricity in the atmosphere shifted, we wondered who he was and what his arrival could signify in this already charged environment. Stay away from him. The mayor barked, pointing as if trying to chase away a stray dog. But the man didn't waver, he focused solely on Harold with a determination that seemed almost primal. What do you want? Harold's voice came out brittle, trembling with uncertainty as pain transformed into confusion. The man stopped just in front of him, panting as though he had run miles. You need to listen to me. It's about the accident, it's not what you think. An ominous hush fell over us. Harold looked as if the ground had shifted beneath his feet, the color draining from his face. What do you mean it's not what I think? Please, just trust me. They're lying, the man insisted, desperation coating his words. There's something you don't know. All these people, they're not seeing the full picture. You have to understand. I watched as the world around Harold began to tilt once again, creating a vast chasm where the weight of uncertainty loomed larger than his earlier grief. As the air thickened with suspense, I realized this was no longer just a moment of grieving, it was the beginning of a tumultuous revelation that would unearth whatever darkness lay buried beneath the surface. The crowd, sensing the escalation, gasped collectively. Harold's eyes widened, a storm brewing within as questions betrayed a fragile composure. What truth lay waiting beneath the fraught layers of grief? What secrets were unspooling, ready to ricochet through the lives of everyone present? I absorbed the charge in the air around us and leaned closer, drawn irrevocably toward the unfolding storm, realizing that this moment, the very essence of vulnerability, could change everything. As the man's words hung in the air, I felt an electric charge that made my heart race. The congregation drew in a collective breath, excitement mingling with dread. Harold, his eyes darting from the newcomer to the expectant crowd, seemed to fade further into the background, almost as if he were a ghost haunting his own life. Lying? What are you saying? He stammered, confusion wrestling with the anger that had previously danced in his eyes. Please. The man implored, now scanning the faces around him as if desperate for an ally. You have to listen. The accident, it was set up. They're trying to pin this on you for reasons that you don't even know about. The crowd erupted in murmurs, shock, skepticism, confusion rippling like waves on a turbulent sea. I could see the quick flicker of doubt in Harold's demeanor, but it was buried beneath the layers of grief and shame he had already accumulated. This news threatened to unravel whatever control he had regained in the moment. What kind of game are you playing? The mayor spat, fury glinting in his eyes as if he felt his grip on the narrative slipping away. This man is a pariah, a tarnish on our community, and you think you can come here and spin some ridiculous tale? It's the truth. The stranger stood his ground, the passion in his voice igniting a spark of something hope, perhaps within me. There are forces at play here, things you don't understand. I've been digging into the details long before this public disaster. Trust me, they want Harold to be the scapegoat. They want to bury him under this accusation. The small girl, still holding tight to Harold's hand, looked between the two men, her innocent spirit sensing the urgency in the air. Her gaze was wide, her tiny brow knitted with worry. Daddy, do you believe him? She asked, her voice gentle yet firm. Harold's shoulders slumped as he gazed down at her, a flicker of uncertainty casting shadows across his previously determined face. It twisted my heart to see him grappling with the gravity of what was being said amidst his own pain. I don't know, sweetheart, he finally whispered, his voice cracking. I wanted to believe in the goodness, in the kindness we had today, but the chaos around us was evolving rapidly. It seemed like the weight of the world pressed on Harold's shoulders, and I felt compelled to help him bear it. Harold, I began, my voice low and steady, what if this stranger is giving you a chance to reclaim your narrative? The answers might lie within this chaos. The stranger nodded fervently, as if my words had provided him with an ally. Harold, this is your chance. Don't let them control what happens next. You deserve to fight. A brief flicker of determination ignited in Harold's eyes, but was quickly extinguished by fear. The mayor, sensing his retreat, stepped forward, his voice turning slick with malice. How easy it is to distract the masses with wild claims. Don't let this man lead you astray, Harold. Think of your reputation, your legacy. But was it a reputation built on a fragile foundation of lies? Inside me, turmoil began to swell as I took a step closer to Harold. Don't let them bully you into silence. Speak your truth, whatever it is. You don't have to shoulder this alone. Because that's what they want, the stranger added, his voice tinged with urgency. To silence you, to drain your spirit. They thrive on your despair. But you, Harold, you can flip the script. Who even are you? Harold finally shouted, a mixture of anger and desperation woven through his words. What do you want from me? I'm just someone who cares, the man admitted, breathing heavily as he moved slightly closer. Someone who lost someone to this accident as well. You might not know me, but what is happening now. It's bigger than all of us. They've manipulated the narrative and you need to take a stand. For all of us. Hope flickered and faded behind Harold's eyes, a battle inside him crackling with unseen energy. The little girl squeezed his hand tighter, her small fingers a connection to innocence and light in the midst of the approaching storm. But the mayor wasn't finished. If you stand with this man, you'll lose everything. Your fortune, your business, your standing. Is that what you want for her? An incredible tension suffused the air, and my heart raced as I grasped at the possibilities unraveling around us. Would Harold succumb to the waves of despair, or was there a flicker of strength ready to break free? Harold, I called out, the urgency in my voice undeniable. What do you truly want? What lies in your heart? Because whatever decision you make today could set the course for your future. As the crowd fell into an eerie silence, the struggle on Harold's face deepened, and I sensed he was teetering on a precipice, staring into the void of uncertainty and hurt. What if I'm too broken to fight? He whispered, panic settling in the crease of his brow. Then let us help you, I urged, desperate for him to turn, if only for a moment, to the flicker of kindness and community surrounding him. But the words hung there, unanchored in the abyss of his turmoil, as if daring him to reach for something greater. A flicker in Harold's eyes waned, replaced by a dawning realization that shook the ground beneath him. In that moment of tension, an audible gasp echoed among the crowd. Just behind the man who had rushed to Harold, a woman emerged, her face pale and drawn. She caught my breath in my throat, for in her hand she held a weathered photograph, a snapshot of the past that could unravel everything. Harold, she said, her voice a mere whisper yet powerful enough to silence even the mayor. You need to see this. The shock was palpable, as though we were all held hostage by the web of secrets waiting to be revealed. What would this photo unveil, and how many lives would it touch in the aftermath? The air was thick with tension, the photograph dangling like a pendulum swinging between revelation and ruin. With the woman's trembling hands, she stepped forward into the uncertain light, her eyes locked onto Harold's, brimming with unshed tears and unspeakable truths. Please, she continued, her voice trembling as she held the photograph closer to her chest. This will explain everything. The congregation leaned in collectively, curiosity eclipsing skepticism. As the crowd encircled us tighter, I caught snippets of hushed speculation. Was this about the accident? A hidden grievance? I felt my heart pound. Harold's world was teetering, and there was a chance this was the key to shift the gears of his fate. Harold, urged the stranger, his determination unwavering, if there's truth to be found, you must face it. With visible resolve, Harold stepped toward her, the little girl at his side, still clutching his hand as if anchoring him to reality. The woman lifted the photograph as if unveiling a sacred relic. This was taken years ago before the accident, back when everything seemed simpler, she whispered, her gaze softening. In the photograph was a younger Harold, laughing with a group of people under a sun-drenched sky, carefree and vibrant. But it wasn't just Harold. Standing beside him was a man strikingly familiar, the very man who had just set chaos into motion. My breath hitched as I registered the stark resemblance, the same piercing eyes, and that unmistakable smile. "That's my brother," Harold said softly, recognition dawning, mingled with confusion. "But how?" The woman nodded somberly, her face clouded by an emotion I couldn't decipher. "He was involved in something dangerous. I believed he could handle it. But when I found out he was connected to the accident, I realized he wasn't the man I thought he was. The truth is, they didn't just want to tarnish your reputation. They wanted to erase him, too." The words settled heavily in the air, forming a cacophony of emotions in the hearts surrounding us. Harold's face twisted as if grappling with the loss of a part of himself he hadn't known he had lost. The stranger reached out, genuine compassion written clear across his features. "You deserve answers, Harold. You're not to be made a victim again. This is your chance to not just fight for yourself but for your brother's memory." The mayor swallowed hard, the fiery bravado he had wielded so easily dwindling into a fragile displacement. You don't get to dictate how this goes anymore," Harold interrupted, a spark igniting in his voice. "I deserve to know the truth, not just for my sake but for all of us affected." The little girl let go of her father's hand, stepping forward to hold the photo directly in front of him. "Daddy, this means you're not alone," she said earnestly. "You can be brave." A tear cascaded down Harold's cheek, but it wasn't one of sorrow. It was like a small dam had broken, releasing a tide of unexpressed emotion. "Brave," he echoed, his voice thick with emotion. "I want to be brave." Seeing the shift within him filled me with fleeting hope, but the reality still draped over us like a storm cloud, dark and menacing. The mayor, realizing the momentum was shifting, attempted a reclaim. "What good can it possibly bring to resurrect the past? You're placing your trust in a man who only seeks to ruin you, Harold." Just as I opened my mouth to interject, defiance dancing at the edge of my lips, a commotion erupted by the entrance. A new figure appeared, a woman cloaked in shadow, her expression unreadable. Attention rippled through the crowd, shifting the focus once more. With every heart in the space beating in synchronization, she stepped fully into the light, and gasps echoed once more. Her presence was electric, and I felt the air crackle with an energy that felt both unsettling and oddly poignant. "What is she doing here?" whispered an onlooker, yet the question barely registered in my mind as the woman locked eyes not with Harold, but with the stranger. "What do you know?" she asked softly, loaded with an undertone that suggested a connection deeper than mere estrangement. The stranger's mouth opened as if to speak but hesitated, glancing from her to Harold, tension binding them in a silent dialogue. Was the world beginning to truly unravel, to reveal the interlaced fates that had led us here? "Please," the woman continued, her voice like a fragile thread weaving through the gathering chaos. "You need to remember, all of you. This was never about just one person. It's always been about all of us and the choices we make." Her words felt like a memory grasping for clarity, shadows of the past looming larger than the present. As Harold's struggle seemed to expand, I felt the gravity of that moment weigh heavily, suspending us in a limbo, an unanswered question, a simmering tension, and a kaleidoscope of conflicting truths that yearned for resolution. The photograph still hung between us all, a silent witness to the collective hearts racing towards a revelation that could shift everything, but first, we had to stare into the abyss. The anticipation was palpable, a fracture in time as I closed my eyes and braced for what would come next. In that fragile silence, something profound shifted within Harold, as a new layer of determination began to unfold. What truth would emerge to alter the course of his life forever? The shock waves of the woman's arrival reverberated through the congregation. There was something electric about her presence, an energy that held everyone in tentative anticipation. As she caught her breath, I could see a flicker of vulnerability buried deep within her eyes, a wounded soul grappling with a past she seemed unable to escape. "Do you remember me, Harold?" She pressed, the weight of her question hanging in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. A mixture of recognition and confusion flickered across Harold's features. I don't know," he finally replied, his voice a mixture of unsure timidity and rising anger. "Who are you?" The woman swallowed hard, stealing glances at the photograph still clutched in his trembling fingers. "I was your brother's fiancée. We had a plan, a life together. But when everything went wrong, I had to disappear." The crowd erupted into murmurs, their stunned expressions twisting into a tapestry of disbelief and curiosity. I could see Harold's heart wrestle with the fresh turmoil of this new reality, a new layer to the complex web of loss that he was already fighting to unravel. "Why now?" he asked, his voice straining against an emotional tide. "Why come back and bring this up after all this time? Why not in the midst of the chaos?" "I was scared," she confessed, tears glistening in her eyes. "Scared of the truth. Scared of what they might do. And scared of losing the only man I ever loved." It hurt to see Harold wrestle with this latest revelation. Still clutching his daughter's hand, he turned away, unable to face the cluttered memories threatening to wash over him like a tidal wave. I wanted to reach out, to comfort him, but my instincts pulled me closer to the newcomer. Something told me she wasn't just a harbinger of pain, perhaps she carried answers, even a path towards healing. "But you don't understand," he finally spat, frustration pouring from his mouth like venom. "I'm the one left standing in the wreckage. I'm the one they're trying to ruin. You returning now changes nothing. You should have stayed hidden." Her face crumpled slightly, and for the first time, I saw the cracks in her veneer. "What if I told you I could help?" she ventured, the words barely above a whisper. "There are things I've uncovered since I left. Things I should have done differently. I need to take responsibility for that, Harold. Together, we might find the answers we've both been searching for." In that moment, I could see slivers of hope begin to penetrate the dark cloud enveloping him. His shoulders sagged, the tension visibly releasing, but I also noticed the flicker of fear in his eyes. Trust was a heavy currency, and he had been robbed of it so many times. The little girl, still holding his hand, tugged on it gently, drawing Harold's attention back to her. "Daddy, she sounds like she wants to help. You've always said we should be brave." Her innocence shone through the brimming shadows, offering a glimmer of light, one that stirred something deep within him. As the chaos settled momentarily around us, a surge of kindness radiated from the stranger who had initially spurred this confrontation. He stepped forward into the circle where Harold stood, eyes still burning with conviction. "We're all here for you, Harold. You're not just fighting for your brother's memory. You're fighting for your future, for your family. I want to help you, too. We'll get through this together." With those words hanging between us like a fragile thread, I felt a stirring shift, a collective energy that spoke louder than the rumble of confusion that had marked this gathering. The community, once merely observers, were now reluctantly turning into allies. Their expressions softened, revealing willingness to shoulder a burden that had borne down on Harold for too long, but before he could respond, the air rushed from my lungs as the woman spoke again, a haunting warning lacing her voice. "You need to be cautious, Harold. If they discover I've returned, if they realize I've come back for a reason, there will be consequences. They aren't finished with any of us." I felt the weight of this ominous revelation settle over us. The congregation shifted uneasily, the momentum was unraveling just as quickly as it had gathered. An undercurrent of urgency began to pulse through the group. Harold's grip on the photograph tightened as if it were a lifeline. Rage and fear mixed in his expression, setting his heart heavy with the knowledge that the threat still loomed, unyielding. "I have to know," he declared, the fierce determination blazing within him once more. "What did you mean by they? Who are they?" The stranger stepped closer, resolute. "It's not just about your brother anymore, Harold. This is about everyone, your life, your family's safety. We need to dig into this together, to shed light on the darkness that has cloaked us all." At that moment, the tension ruptured like a thunderclap, and suddenly the room was alive with murmurs of renewed purpose. However, as hope flickered within the crowd, so did the shadows lurking at the edges of our gathering. A loud crash erupted from the back of the assembly hall. Glass shattered, chaos erupted anew as strong figures forced their way in, eyes sharp with searing intent. My heart raced. This was not merely a commentary on the truth standing on the brink of revelation, it was a full-scale assault on our hard-fought moment. "Get out of the way!" boomed a voice I recognized from the mayor's inner circle, a reminder that those in power would not permit us to steal back our narratives so easily. "Harold!" I shouted, panic rising within me. A new battle loomed on the horizon, and I knew the confrontation had only just begun. Harold stood frozen, caught between the woman who claimed to hold answers and the new storm of violence crashing into our fragile gathering. Fear gripped him as the echo of shattering glass resonated in his ears, drawing him further away from the fragile hope that had begun to blossom. "They've found us," he murmured, the weight of despair threading itself into his voice. "Get the child out of here!" the woman shouted, her tone brimming with urgency. Yet, even as she spoke, I could see the officer marching toward us, flanked by men whose scowls spelled nothing but intimidation. Harold's daughter clung tighter to his leg, her wide eyes mirroring his growing terror. The moment felt as surreal as it was devastating. Hope and dread danced a tenuous tango at the forefront of our hearts. "Everyone, stay calm!" I shouted, my voice barely breaking through the escalating panic. I took a step forward, feeling the warmth of those standing beside me as solidarity flickered in their expressions. "We can't let them drown us in fear." But as the men surged forward, I feared my words would falter under the weight of force. Someone bumped against me, and I stumbled, only to feel a strong hand steady my balance. I turned to find the stranger standing beside me, eyes resolute. "This is our fight now. If you have something to say, say it." Harold was visibly shaking, the photograph he gripped like a talisman seemed to slip when he suddenly turned. "No!" he yelled, shielding his daughter with his arms. "Stay back. We're not finished here." With each outburst, Harold ignited a flicker of courage within the small crowd that had gathered, their faces set with determination to protect one another, but the officers pressed on, faces devoid of compassion. "You're causing a scene, and if you don't comply, there will be consequences." One officer stepped forward. "That's enough." A sense of dread settled over me, its icy grip a stark reminder of how precarious our position had become. I glanced at the woman, her eyes darted from Harold to the doorway as if weighing her options and the fate of those around her. Would she fight for them, or would the shadows of her past swallow her back into silence? "Harold, we need to find a way to stay together." I shouted, the words spiraling out of desperation. "Don't lose sight of why we're here." "That's easy for you to say," he snapped, regret coating his anger. You haven't lived through. A sudden shout pierced through the chaos, a voice rising above the frantic tones of uncertainty. "Enough. We have to resist." It was the stranger again, stepping forward with unyielding conviction. "This is the moment we're called to act. Are you all going to let fear strip everything away from us once more?" The words hung in the air, striking chords of unity and rebellion. Slowly, the murmurs grew, heads nodded, and shoulders squared against the oncoming threat. Each heartbeat drummed a rallying song, a clarion call for the community that had been waiting for someone to break the chains of silence. Suddenly, before I could process what was happening, the woman rushed forward, her expression fierce and alive. "You want answers? You'll find them here." She shouted defiantly at the officers, as she took off the scarf that covered her neck to reveal an intricate tattoo, a symbol that looked dangerously familiar. "You want to silence us? You'll have to do a hell of a lot better than this." The men hesitated, their resolve shaken just long enough to create a tense stillness. My heart raced. I realized this was more than just a confrontation over a past wound, it was a confrontation against a fear that had lingered in the shadows for far too long. The seconds dragged, thick with suspense, and as if time had conspired against us, a wave of realization washed over me. I had seen that tattoo before, somewhere in the articles and whispers about the very organization that had held our lives in a stranglehold. You were involved with them?" I breathed, staring into the woman's eyes. "How could you?" "I ran." She cried back, the urgency reaching a fever pitch. "But I know things. And more importantly, I can help expose them." A cavalcade of emotions crashed over me, betrayal, anger mingling with a reluctant spark of hope. Yet just as our hearts began to rally against the darkened tide of fate, a screeching of tires outside reverberated through the hall like an alarm. "Harold, we must leave now." The urgency in my voice felt sharper than the glint of fear in the room. "If they come for her, there's no telling what they'll do next." The serenity of our small moment shattered as the door swung open, revealing a figure cloaked in darkness, the mayor's advisor, the mastermind behind this chaos. "You think you can escape? You're too late," he hissed, an optimistic grin working its way across his face. A rush of blood pulsed in my ears. The battle had only just ignited, and it was about to take an unimaginable turn. As I caught Harold's eye, I knew we were staring into an abyss of danger and desperation. Every decision ahead could unravel our collective destinies. "None of this ends until the truth is uncovered," I whispered, ready to face the storm once and for all, my heartbeat sinking with the growing strain of hope fluctuating in the air. But just as the atmosphere crackled with possibility and peril, a phone rang out sharply across the assembly hall, shattering the weight of our resolve. We turned, a collective gasp escaping us. It was Harold's phone. The screen lit up with a name neither of us expected to see at that moment, sending shockwaves through our already fractured reality. "Mom," he murmured, shockingly low, casting his gaze upon the woman beside him with wide incredulity. "How did you?" Everything paused, the world around me blurring, as the threads of our fates began to converge in ways none of us could have anticipated. Harold's voice trembled as he stared at the phone, the name glowing in ominous clarity. "Mom," he repeated, a whisper filled with disbelief, as if saying it too loudly might shatter whatever fragile connection had just sparked before us. The room fell silent, a heavy pause suffocating the chaos, while despair and longing coalesced in his expression. The strangers, the officers, the chaos, they all faded away for that fleeting moment as Harold grappled with the shock of a possibility he hadn't dared to entertain. The woman beside him, no longer just a source of anger, became a mirror reflecting Harold's unresolved questions and fears. I searched her face, and found my own surprise echoed there, a realization of hope entangled with complexity. Are you safe?" he asked, fingers trembling as he accepted the call. The tension in his shoulders uncoiled slightly, but just as quickly, the looming presence of danger crept back into the room. Everyone remained frozen, the atmosphere heavy with unspoken questions and uncertainty. Her voice came through the phone, trembling but firm. "Harold, I've been trying to reach you. I have information. They're planning something big, something terrible. If you're still alive, you need to leave now." Her words sent a shiver down my spine, and I watched as Harold's face shifted through a kaleidoscope of emotions: anger, relief, disbelief, sorrow. I could feel how every heartbeat echoed in the room, how each breath drew us back into the storm as reality loomed close. It was ironic how one desperate cry could throw open windows to possibilities, yet at the same time, draw the storm even closer. "I can't just leave." "What do you know?" Harold pleaded, his voice thick with raw urgency, grounding us in what felt like a final rope to cling to amidst the chaos enveloping us. "Harold, please." His mother's voice crackled with static but held a trembling edge of desperation. I don't have time. Trust me, the people you think are protecting you, they're lying. They're planning to hurt you to bury the truth. You can't trust anyone, especially the mayor's people. I watched as the shadows of dread merged with flickers of determination on Harold's face. I don't need to hear what they've done, I need to know why you left. I did it to protect you. She cried back, her words echoing against the cold walls. But I was wrong, I should have stayed. You need to find the others. You must keep them safe. The key is with the necklace, Harold. It leads to the call abruptly cut off, leaving the room thick with an unsettling silence, a death knell resounding in my heart. I caught the woman's eyes, desperation twisting into guilt as she recognized what this moment might mean for Harold and the child he had been protecting. Stay focused, I said, my voice a tether pulling us back from brink of panic. We have what we need to understand we're not alone in this. If what she said is true, we won't just be protecting ourselves, we'll have the opportunity to protect more lives. But deep within me, a gnawing urge whispered that this thread could unravel easily. It felt painfully clear that hope was akin to a double-edged sword, whose light could just as well reveal further darkness ahead. The door slammed open again, and my heart sank in disbelief as the mayor's advisor stepped through, wearing a smug grin that cut sharper than any knife. Did I hear someone talking about the truth? He sneered, his eyes gleaming with an unsettling intensity. I think it's time we put an end to this little reunion. His presence felt all-consuming, and I could almost taste the panic in the air as the shadows danced along the walls. A gathering of fear began to swell, suffocating the flickering hope that had emerged moments before. We're not your prey. The stranger yelled, stepping in front of Harold and his daughter, steadfast and defiantly unyielding. The unity that had begun to form once again ignited in the room, faces illuminated by the fire of our collective resolve. Enough! The advisor shouted back, voice echoing off the walls like a clap of thunder. You really have no idea the depths of this game you're playing. You think you can fight what's already in play? You really don't comprehend the stakes. If you think that what you do now won't cost you dearly, you're mistaken. Then we'll face it together. I shouted, the words bursting forth as I stood beside the stranger. Whatever darkness lies ahead, we will hold the line. But his chilling laugh reminded me of the precipice we stood upon, taunting us with the full force of our own naivety. That might be the last choice you'll ever make. Then, as if orchestrated by a dark hand above us, I noticed in the commotion that Harold's daughter had slipped away from the group, her tiny form dashing past bewildered faces, confusion mingling with the undercurrents of tension. I turned just in time to see her standing at the feet of the advisor, who looked down at her with a predatory gleam in his eyes. And who might you be, little one? He intoned, a cruel smirk twisting his lips. Daddy, I need to show you something. She shouted, her voice cutting through the atmosphere with unexpected clarity as she raised her hand, revealing an ornate necklace glistening in the dim light, a haunting echo of the place from which it had come. Panic enveloped me as I took a step forward. This was the key, the token of their labyrinthine past that had unleashed all this chaos. But in that moment, another thought pierced through. What other truths lay intertwined with the very necklace that could open doors yet unseen both for our salvation and our undoing? As Harold let out a cry of urgency, I felt the world explode around us, and every heartbeat became an echo of desperation. The storm was no longer just a tempest outside threatening to dismantle our fragile gathering, but a storm that was tightening its grip over our destinies, and the clarity we sought was tangled within the very shadows we sought to illuminate. Get back! No! Harold shouted, but the twisted web of our realities began to unravel before our very eyes, and as the connection between the past and future tightened, I wondered how much more was destined to be revealed beneath the turbulent surface of our lives. Would any of us still stand when the last truth finally broke free? The chaos erupted into a cacophony of panic, the sharp sound of Harold's voice the only thing that seemed to cut through the noise. Get away from her! He shouted, his body surging forward as instinct took over. The mayor's advisor, now crouched low, regarded the little girl with wide, oiled eyes, and for the briefest moment, time itself seemed to pause. In that suspended stillness, the world outside evaporated, leaving only the burning intensity of fear and desperation in the room. The necklace dangled precariously from the girl's small fingers, catching the light as if it were alive, a talisman of secrets and forgotten histories. "Daddy, I can help," she implored, her innocent face a stark contrast to the dark storm swirling around us. "Stay back." Harold's voice cracked, reverberating off the walls like a desperate prayer. His eyes darted towards the advisor, who had straightened to his full height, a smirk still plastered across his face. It was a mask that twisted everything around it, morphing fear into contempt as he took a step toward her. "No, darling, don't," I gasped, lunging forward, though my feet felt imbued with lead, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. I could see how the advisor's interest shifted a calculated leap from menace to manipulation. "Come here, sweetheart," he cooed, the saccharine tone drawing out an unbearable anger within me. It was the voice of a predator enticing its prey. "Show me what your father has been hiding. I promise I'll protect you." "No." Harold thundered, his arms stretched out as if trying to bridge the distance that seemed to grow between him and the girl. The moment hung like a taut wire, ready to snap at the slightest jolt. But before the worst could occur, a ripple of life surged through the crowd. An older woman, who had remained mostly silent amid the storm, stepped forward. Her face was lined with the years of struggle, but her eyes sparkled with a determination that seemed to catch the shards of light glimmering from the necklace. "Leave her alone," she shouted, her voice cracking but unwavering, a lioness ready to protect her cub. "You have no business here. This is a child." The advisor momentarily hesitated, his attention diverted by the resolve that bloomed in the faces surrounding him. It was in that fleeting moment of uncertainty that something luminous unfolded. A wave of courage washed over us, and I saw unity, unexpected and raw. A coalition against the storm that had threatened to fracture us all. "Step back." The stranger before Harold barked again, arms spread wide like a shield, fiercely guarding against the dark. "We won't let you touch her or any of us." The advisor's expression morphed from a confident sneer to a scowl, his plan unraveling before our very eyes. "You think this is a game? You're in way over your heads," he spat, but I could see the subtle crack in his bravado, a crack that revealed just how much he underestimated us. "Maybe we have been over our heads," I said, feeling the tremor of vulnerability weave through my chest. "But together? We're stronger than you'll ever understand." Just then, the child's voice piped up, cutting through the thick tension like a bell of clarity. "I can help everyone. Daddy, this is for you." She turned slightly, presenting the necklace as if it were a key rather than a burden. But just what could it unlock? And at what cost? Harold's eyes flickered between his daughter and the unfamiliar faces surrounding them, then back to the advisor, his resolve deepening. "You won't touch her," he declared with raw conviction. "She isn't part of your schemes. Whatever this is, it ends now." In a heartbeat, the advisor's face contorted into fury, and he lunged forward. Time unfurled in slow motion. The older woman stepped forward resolutely, intertwining arms with the stranger's, their defiance awakening a flicker of resistance in the crowd. As if ignited by an unseen battery, the air became electrified, fists clenched with determination, solidarity brightening their features. We had faced down storms before, and there was a flicker of unity. That told me we weren't about to back down now. But amid this rising tide of defiance, the tiny hand holding the necklace quaked slightly, and that tremor radiated through me. The girl looked deep into Harold's eyes, her own reflecting a wisdom far beyond her years. "Daddy, you have to believe me. It was Grandma's. It can show us where to go." He swallowed hard, his heart visibly wrestling with despair. Where to go? But before she could answer, the advisor lunged again, aiming for her small form, a palpable darkness descending. Just then, the room erupted in a chaotic whirlwind of voices, limbs, and cries. And in that oxymoron of ascendant hope and spiraling fear, I felt a jarring shift. The necklace began to glow brightly, a beacon amidst the tumult. The overwhelming brightness pierced the dimness of the room, illuminating faces: fear, courage, confusion, and hope meshing together in a vivid tapestry. But as that radiance cast away the gathering shadows, a sharp gasp rang out, and the advisor faltered mid-lunge, his expression shifting from anger to something else entirely. It felt colder than before, filled with recognition and dread. Then, without warning, the light exploded into every corner of the room, blinding us all. Just as quickly, all sense of time and space flickered out, and in that immense, profound brightness, I felt a whisper tugging at the edges of my consciousness, a warning of revelations yet to unfold, and then, I felt it. A shiver ran up my spine as something or someone shifted in the fabric of reality itself. The realization gripped me tighter: a connection lived beneath the surface of the chaos that tied us all together, something ancestral and ancient, and now, brimming with possibilities. Harold's voice echoed faintly through the overwhelming light. What have we unleashed? But the answer was lost amidst the roar of everything clashing and curving, crashing and blending, spiraling toward an unknown fate, leaving us all teetering on the brink of something we had yet to understand, a dark and twisting mystery ready to unfold. Would we find the strength to embrace the unseen, or would we be swallowed whole by it? The world faded to white, drowning out every thought and emotion until nothing remained. Then, just as suddenly, I was painfully back-plopped onto the cold pavement beneath the old fountain where it all began. But I wasn't alone. The so-called chaos had transformed into an intimate space, surrounded by the warmth of collective humanity, mended by the raw threads of vulnerability. The faces that had once worn masks of judgment now glowed with understanding. That I blinked against the sun's glow, only this time, it didn't feel muted under heavy clouds, it felt bright with potential, reflecting upon those who had gathered because of Harold's sorrow, his reality fracturing into pieces of honesty amidst the warmth of newfound resilience. Is everyone okay? I asked, voice frail yet steady, as though fear's grip had loosened just enough for hope to seep in. My gaze turned to Harold, who sat cross-legged on the ground with his daughter clutched safely to his side. The necklace pulsed, softly illuminating the space. He looked dazed yet transformed, eyes glimmering with a mixture of gratitude and something else I struggled to name. Maybe acceptance. Yeah, he breathed, still struggling to find footing in a world charged with revelations. I think we're in a different place now. The crowd formed a circle, gazes shifting from Harold to his daughter, then to the mysterious necklace, a token that had, literally and figuratively, lit the way. When the riotous tide of tension had washed away, I caught the glimmers of this new reality evolving around us. The stranger who had always stood by Harold's side stepped forward, commitment shining like armor in his rounded shoulders. We have much to learn from this, and together, we can untangle the truths that connect us all. A murmur of agreement echoed, the unity palpable as we slowly began to shift into an assembly of allies. But it was the little girl who offered the most profound anchor to our swirling emotions. Daddy, can we help everyone find their brave? She asked sweetly, her voice a soft echo amongst the adults, eyes bubbling with hope that only children can wield freely. Harold's heart cracked open wider, layers peeling away, revealing that tenderness buried deep beneath sorrow. You're right, sweetheart. We can help each other. The words slipped from his lips like a gentle waterfall, infusing life back into the aching roots of his strength. Unexpected warmth welled within me as I, too, absorbed this shift, sensing redemption, a chance to rewrite the course of fractured lives. I saw faces that had previously been consumed by bitterness now soften, united under Harold's embrace. It suddenly struck me he wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for us all. The mayor's advisor had vanished, perhaps dissolved into the shadows from whence he came, unable to confront the resilience blooming before us. The room pulsed with the energy of change, igniting something deep within, something that had always been there yet waited patiently in the silence. Harold, I said, emboldened by the moment, perhaps your journey isn't just about uncovering the truth of your brother or the necklace. It's about bringing together stories that have been silenced far too long. What if we turned our pain into strength, turning risk into possibility? His gaze locked onto mine, recognition dawning, and I could see a flicker ignite in his eyes. Yes. Tell everyone. Tell them that stories connect us, that we find strength in the cracks we share. Old wounds echoed with truths longing to be heard. As the sun finally broke through the remaining clouds, the promise of renewal danced in its rays. Turning to face the crowd, I felt my heart swell as each individual counted. We were all in this together, all deserving of love, acceptance, and kindness. In that moment of collective clarity, we found ourselves forged anew an unbreakable circle, each thread weaving into the tapestry of forgiveness and communal responsibility. Let us share the truth we've unearthed, for the world needs the light we carry within us, Harold announced, anchor of this united front. Let us become a community that shows kindness instead of division. And so with a radical lightness, we began to share, to step into our truths, unafraid of the shadows they cast, creating a symphony of vulnerability that reverberated through the crowd. The past was no longer simply a series of burdens, it was the crux of who we were becoming. As I stood amidst those brave souls, Harold's fierce determination blossoming into acceptance, I felt the weight of 1,000,000 prayers released into the air. The final chapter of our old stories began here, bathed in revelations. Then, embracing the frayed edges of what we'd become, I breathed in deeply as Harold turned to his daughter. You've led us here. Let us keep finding our brave, he said, and together, we spoke the words that would echo long after. We shall not be defined by our scars, but by the healing we choose to create. And at that moment, I realized that healing, just like hope, might just be the most fundamental act of courage one could embrace. The world, still adjusting to the light of our new beginnings, helped us remember that sometimes the most powerful transformations start with a desperate cry, one that reaches past despair, toward heartwarming acts of kindness, planting seeds of resilience in blossoming hearts, until they could no longer be contained. Together, we stepped forward, determined to shape a new path, forging ahead one story at a time, turning wounds into wings that would allow us to soar. In our unity, we found not just hope, but the strength to rewrite a narrative that belonged to us all, and as we ventured out, hand in hand, I understood the truth we had woven together. Sometimes, the hardest journey leads us home.